Hello and welcome back to the MacGuffin tapes. I'm Michael, follower of the Cajun cult and one half of the this podcast, and I'm joined here as always by the leader of Balianism, Ala. How are you doing?
This just sounds so cool, actually. I think we created a cult now, right now. Cool. And we're here today to discuss actually a film that just perfectly fits into this cult because it
hmm
is a film with Christian Bale in it. I'm doing fine. How are
You
you
see, I
doing?
work on my opening lights. I put a lot of effort in them that
I
they make
know,
sense.
right? I know. I never said you don't.
Yeah, but which Christian Bale movie, or actually I should say a Jessie Buckley film, or even
How dare you forget Jessie Buckley's name? Nobody will ever forget Jessie Buckley's name after this weekend where she gets her first Oscar.
mhm, Jessie Buckley, and maybe we should also say first and foremost Maggie. Is it Gyllenhaal? Yeah, I guess it's
I
Gyllenhaal. Yeah,
say Gyllenhaal. I think most
yeah.
people say Gyllenhaal.
And the movie we are talking about today is The Bride! Exclamation mark.
Yes. We have a lot of punctuation in the
Yeah,
titles lately.
yeah. I was about to say the same thing. I guess this is a another gothic
Another iteration. Yeah.
gothic film. I guess this is mostly I call it I would say this is a genre pastiche of different references. And we'll get into that.
hmm But yeah, what we can say is that this is kind of a more feminist view of the story of Frankenstein or Mary Shelley, because obviously we recently talked about Frankenstein by Guillermo del Toro with Jacob Elordi, and again, I always mix up Oscar Isaac. As far as I hope I'm right. I'm always mix up Oscar Isaac and Jason Isaacs. So yeah, but this was more from the male perspective, was completely different story, and now this is The Bride exclamation mark about Frankenstein's bride, which was obviously not in the original Frankenstein story by Mary Shelley. It was brought to us by the popular culture. I think it is the 1930s, I think, film that's the Bride of Frankenstein, where this kind of serves as an inspiration for this film, but not the only inspiration. I think there's quite a lot of references and quite a lot of films and cultural points that definitely influenced this film.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, it's a nice follow-up if you have seen Frankenstein by Guillermo del Toro and following this up. So I don't know if people in Hollywood talk about the calendar of movies, what's coming out, but yeah, interesting that a lot of directors seem to be delving into this sort of gothic monster genre or
See,
gothic
I
genre.
told you this last year and you didn't believe me. Now you do.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I think this is referenced somewhere here on this podcast.
I think what we should definitely say is that this is the second film by Maggie Gyllenhaal. Maggie Gyllenhaal is obviously the sister of the actor that we all know and love, Jake Gyllenhaal, and she is also an actress. She's mostly known as an actress. There were a few projects where she was also a producer. Famously, that would be The Deuce, at least for me. Um, and then she made a film with Olivia Colman and Dakota Johnson. That was her first, the kind of directorial debut, at least full format. And then she also made a short film, I believe, in kind of an anthology. So that is another reason why I was so excited for this film is, well, Maggie Gyllenhaal as a director. Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that are exciting on the surface to be attracted to this film to begin with.
Yeah, and as always, we're going to talk about the movie in length and hopefully also in depth. So please, if you haven't seen the movie, stop this podcast, go see it, and then hopefully come back and listen to us talk about it and discuss some of the elements and details about this movie. Where I wanted to start is, as I usually do, is with a question. And hopefully this also allows us to talk a bit about the plot, although we are not going to summarize the plot because, yeah, we know that you have seen the movie. But I wanted to ask you, why is this movie set in 1930s, I guess, Chicago and New York?
I think there are just generally a lot of things, a lot of aspects that are combined into this film. It's hard to say what the motivation behind it was, and I guess partly this is what we're going to talk about, but and partly also a point of criticism and a point of praise of this film, interestingly enough. I think we already talked about one film where I said the things that get praised and the things that get criticized are exactly the same things. I'm not sure if it was The Wuthering Heights or something else, but but we definitely had a film like that before. And there are a lot of things that create the atmosphere for this film. And I don't know if it has to do with the original Bride of Frankenstein that is also probably set around the same time, or not
That's a good
set
point.
around the same time, but comes from this era, let's say, more so. There is also a lot of influence of old Hollywood for whatever reason. There's not really a clear explanation as to why. But there is kind of a fascination that the creature, or Frankenstein, or Frank as he is known in the film, played by Christian Bale, the fascination he has with a classic Hollywood actor played by Jake Gyllenhaal. So there's a lot of family involved as well. There's Jake Gyllenhaal, Maggie Gyllenhaal's brother is in it, and um, oh my
Peter
God,
Sarsgaard.
Peter Sarsgaard is also in it. I love Peter Sarsgaard.
We should say Peter Sarsgaard is Maggie Gyllenhaal's husband.
Husband, yeah. So yeah, that is definitely a family affair as well. And this is only one thing. The 30s, the inspiration of the 30s is only one aspect of it that is in it. As to why, I can't say, and what it does, also not. But maybe in a way, it's kind of the time when women are a little more empowered, are coming out from this era where they were they didn't have as many rights. So maybe that also is a kind of a reason for it. But what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the historical circumstances, but for sure, I didn't think about what you were just mentioning. So mostly the inspiration being Hollywood's classical cinema and sort of the golden age, which goes from around 30s to 60s, I believe.
Yeah, and what we should also say is that the film kind of has this vibe and structure of kind of post-mortem Bonnie and Clyde, and so yeah, maybe that also has its inspiration from there, because obviously Bonnie and Clyde were also around, I think, 1930s, I believe.
Just to clarify, it's Bonnie and Clyde, right? So that pun, Bonnie and Clyde, was just an
Aha.
unintended pun.
Actually works well, yeah.
Yeah. I agree. You mentioned the Bride, the movie. I think it's 1936, and the other one is Frankenstein. One of the adaptations is 1931. Sort of those are the universal horror movies that had influenced a lot of cinema as a source of inspiration from an artistic side. That makes total sense, and that's, I guess, the why. I was coming at it like you hinted at from the angle of the story, like why, from a plot perspective, why is it set in the 30s? And I guess partially is what you mentioned that, yeah, the role of women in society at that moment. And I guess the other plot point is the character, was it Luponi, the mafia boss?
I don't remember the name, but yeah, something like that.
Yeah, who is sort of an Al Capone figure.
hmm
Yeah, and what you mentioned, the sort of Bonnie and Clyde sort of aspect to the story.
Maybe let's go back, kind of one step back and talk about the genre mix that it even is, because I think it will make it a bit clearer why certain influences are in this film. So we said the film is kind of, as you said, a pastiche of different genres, right? So which genres would you detect?
Yeah, for sure. So one, I guess from the plot is this sort of, is it heist or heist like Bonnie and Clyde? Have you seen Bonnie and Clyde? I haven't seen it, but
No, I
yeah,
have not.
I just know a little bit about the story from like popular culture about this duo of robber gangsters who go on a run. What other genres? Well, I mentioned in the beginning, it's sort of a gothic, sort of this
hmm
suffering. What else is part of gothic? Gothic genre. What themes?
Isolation, not
Yeah.
belonging, yeah, this kind of monstrosities and all that. But yeah, I mean, Gothic is definitely a big part of it. This is kind of where Frankenstein comes from, right? And I guess you could say that this is an ancestor of the horror genre in kind of to begin with in general. So you could say there is a bit of horror involved, although I would say this is probably the minimal part of it. It is
Agreed.
also a kind of a love story in a way. Also, I would say not as prominent as you would think,
Hmm.
considering that the film is called The Bride, and it is about the relationship between the bride and Frankenstein's monster. So, it's a detective story. There are detectives involved. Um, it is a bit of a musical as well. There are some elements to it that come from that genre. Um, and it all coming together, that is now the question for me, is whether it was a balanced combination or a combination that created a unique film that is good and interesting. That is a bit of an open question for me, and I hope we can come to a conclusion.
Hmm.
I believe I have my opinion,
Yep.
but yeah, I think it's probably an open question to a lot of people because as I said, I feel like people criticize and praise the same things about this film. So it's a bit of a, like it or hate it kind of film.
Hmm. Yeah, you were saying influences. I was just thinking about, well, there's also a detective kind of aspect in this movie, and sort
hmm
of these dark noir detective
Oh yeah.
movies. I think it's also from the 30s. Let me just see
Yeah,
here.
yeah, it's about
It's
about
no, it's
around
a bit
that.
later.
Yeah.
It made me think of It made me think of Sunset Boulevard. That's sort of a detective dark noir
hmm
movie. Yeah, it's just to add on what you were saying, the musical aspect. I think you can see that mostly in Ronnie Reed's characters, who is
hmm
played by Jake Gyllenhaal, who for me plays sort of a Fred Astaire kind of
hmm
character. Or do you have any other comparison or
No, this
analogy?
is exactly what I was thinking as well. And
Hmm.
there is because the Christian Bale's character, I mean, let's just call him Frankenstein. Obviously, Frankenstein was
Frankie.
the Frank. Frank is has this fascination of this actor, and he perceives him as this kind of almost a role model, and obviously this is kind of a way for those musical elements to enter their story as well. So the musical, as you also said, like more in the dance slash musical film, exactly like what Fred Astaire would be in. I think this is just a classic example. And I think those films are also from around 1940s, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Fred Astaire had a career that spanned over many decades, but
Yeah, but I think the most famous examples would be
mhm.
probably around that time.
Yeah, there's one sort of visual reference that I had when there's one dance scene playing with Ronnie Reed, where they are sort of on a patio or a dance hall, and we see them from the front dancing, and that reminded me of a Fred Astaire movie, but that was already a sort of a colored film, which, well, I don't remember at the moment, but yeah, for sure those references are. And if you don't mind, if you go a bit deeper into this part of the story, why do you think Ronnie Reed is in here as a character in the movie? Because I feel like they could have inserted actual footage from that era. So, what do you think about this choice, and why did they make what they did Maggie Gyllenhaal make this choice?
Yeah, to be honest, I cannot really answer that because this is exactly also the question that I have. I don't really understand some of the choices that were made, and this is one of them. Do you have an idea?
Just thought of this right now. So maybe by having it be a fictional character, it puts the story in a sort of a fictional place, as opposed to if you would have an actual movie in there, it's more grounded, as opposed to, well, this story is on the fictional side, that we have monsters and science fiction elements with the Doctor.
Yeah, well, maybe there's also an element of, creating a bit of space where Frank lived in the sense that there's not only disillusionment, depression, and isolation, but also this little world that he created for himself that he kind of wants to kind of inhabit, but it doesn't have access to.
Yeah, exactly. And he mentions that in the encounter, I think, that he has with Ronnie Reed, that his movies gave him hope, and that sort of thing. I mean, I have two answers as to why it's a a made up actor for this movie. The one is probably copyright. That would have been expensive, I guess. And yeah, no, actually that's my answer. And the other one I already gave is with the groundedness.
Yeah, I don't know if the consideration of money and rights was really that essential here because obviously this project already had a lot of like a big budget. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I think that was a conscious decision to create Ronnie Reed as a separate character.
Mhm. I mean, there's always multiple reasons why choices get made. I just know that sometimes if there are songs played in the movie, that those cost quite a lot for copyright reasons. Yeah, like you said, I guess it was mostly an artistic reason in this case. But yeah, for me, the point is that I didn't have a great payoff of this Ronnie Reed storyline. I mean, the major payout is that encounter that they have, and then it turns out that Ronnie Reed is, well, his character or the actor is different than the character he plays, which is, I guess, something that people who work in that industry come across a lot, that like fans of movies approach actors and they say, "Oh, I love you as this character," and they don't distinguish between the character and the actor. So maybe that's
Hmm.
a bit what was referenced there. And but yeah, I think that payoff, it wasn't a real payoff for me, or maybe they had filmed more around that Ronnie character, but yeah, they had to leave it on the cutting floor.
Hmm. Yeah, that could be.
we started talking about references, and that's actually what I wanted to get more into because I said
Mhm.
it's a pastiche and there are lots of references. What other references did you find, like visual or from talking about other movies and
Mhm.
that sort of thing?
Well, I would say that probably the more prominent and important ones, or I guess you could put it into kind of one category, is this detective slash noir film. And Bonnie and Clyde kind of fits into that because there's a bit of a love story, a criminal love story, and then there are detectives that are chasing them. Now, if we leave the love story aside for now and talk about the detective part. So we get to the characters of Penelope Cruz and Peter Sarsgaard. What did you think of that constellation and storyline? And how was that for you?
Yeah, great that you bring that up because that's something I was thinking about. It's sort of an element of this movie. I was thinking about if this was a necessary subplot, and it adds something to the story. Like I said, it grounds the plot that Peter Sarsgaard's character, Jake Wiles, well, he has a backstory with Ida, and it grounds it more into this, like I said, mafia background a little bit. And then the other part we have is that, Penelope Cruz's character, oh, it's actually a cool name, Myrna Malloy, sort of is
Mhm.
the first, ends up as the first female detective. Yeah, I thought their interaction, I mean, the cast in general, I think they do a great job, but I think I especially enjoyed Penelope's and Cruz's and Sarsgaard's interaction and when they were in the car. But
Mhm.
for the most part, I thought it was a bit distracting.
Mhm. I agree with you. I just also think in general this was probably the weakest link in the story. I It was distracting. It was not very interesting for me personally to follow. Um, all the while, I must say, everybody did a great job. As always, this is a great cast. Everybody has, I guess, their moment, but somehow I didn't feel like all the characters belonged. And it's kind of a very interesting dichotomy here because they are good characters standalone on their own, but when you put them all into this mix, they kind of don't fit. And this was especially the case for me personally with Penelope Cruz. She's great on her own, but somehow she's not fitting into the story. And especially in the end, I just felt like, oh no, this was just so strange to watch that. And Peter Sarsgaard's character just kind of disappeared into nowhere at some point, and there was no resolution to this character. Yeah, I think this was really the weakest plot line for me.
Yeah, maybe tonally, as you mentioned, they're also a bit on a different tone, like more on the detective tone or more realistic tone, as opposed to Frankie and the Bride. Yeah, maybe that brings you out a bit of the movie, or like you said, yeah, it's completely different. I think what helps there is that their scenes are sort of isolated, or they're not intercut with like the main storyline.
Well, they
So is it
do get involved at some point. And I mean, it kind of makes sense, like, right? It's usually the case if you follow the criminals and you follow kind of cops and robbers, right? So you follow one and then you follow the other, and then at some point they collide. It is kind of a standard detective story
yes, yeah,
structure,
yeah.
but
Mhm.
still, yeah, even when they do collide and come together, it's as if they still didn't really collide and they didn't really integrate into each other. Yeah, it's a bit strange.
Yeah, so I guess the main touching point is when they meet when Sarsgaard meets the bride face to face, and he tells her, well, in the previous life you were Ida, and she was the sort of informant for I guess for the police about gathering information and intel about the Lupino character, this mafia boss character. And he mentioned, I mean, Sarsgaard's character mentions that he got romantically involved with her. But yeah, as we see in the beginning of the movie, then she later got killed off. I think the other plot or the other discussion that was interesting for me in the storyline was at the end of this storyline where Sarsgaard and Cruz sit down and have this talk, and he explains to him, well, he just basically just tells this backstory that I just mentioned, but there's a line in there that what was it exactly, that he didn't have the guts to step up about this injustice. Do you remember how this went?
Not exactly, but I know the scene that you're talking about, but yeah, that he basically was too cowardly to speak up about it, right? About the situation with Ida and generally with the women, I think,
Yeah.
that were
Well,
around.
and this I like because for me this was a sort of subtle allusion to the whole Me Too movement and
Hmm.
like stuff
All
that
right.
happened with actors and that sort of thing. So for me that it was quite subtle, and I like that.
Hmm.
And him admitting that he didn't have the guts then to do something about it, but then he gives his badge to Penelope and showing that she's the first female detective in that squad. So
Hmm.
I like that payoff. It's a small moment, but it was subtle. I think that worked for me.
Yeah, well, I understand, and also I think that this is a very kind of caricature moment almost when he gives the badge and like, she's the detective now. It's almost like too standard. Like there's nothing interesting about it.
I know what you mean in the sense that so for me actually this conflict that I described in the backstory is more interesting as opposed to the
Hmm.
what he does about it now in this movie. But I guess the point is that you're limited in time to show
Hmm.
that he does something about it. So I guess yeah, it's quite an obvious choice there or
Yeah.
action that he takes. But on the other
And
hand,
it's
yeah, like
just
we
you
said.
always have limited time, but if you are making the film, you should invest your time into kind of discovering how you can show it in a way that is informative and doesn't take a lot of time. And I don't know, it just was kind of a lazy move for me. And just generally speaking, this whole storyline with Myrna, right, is her name, the detective, is a bit on the nose again. It's kind of like the detective and the lawful good and yeah, it was, I mean, it definitely has space, but it's a bit lazy, I feel like. It is more interesting to look at the bride. Obviously, she's also the main character, but yeah, I don't know. It was this storyline with Myrna and
Mhm.
kind of this feminist angle on that plot line is a bit lazy for me and too obvious.
Yeah, for sure. I guess what I said mostly had to do with time constraints. Although, yeah, on the other hand, like you said, you should try to find a way to do that
Mhm.
well, to do that well. But I just remembered another moment which I thought was interesting and a bit more subtler, which was after Myrna and Jake Wilds, after they have their first encounter with the police at that crime scene. And Wilds plays this sort of macho character, for lack of a better term, and sort of takes the lead in their duo.
Mhm.
And afterwards, they have a talk at I guess what is like a dine, no, not a diner, or like a restaurant.
Mhm.
And then Malloy tells was that she hates when he does that sort of character. So I found that interesting, that talking about that they were moving around the stereotypical or the norm of how that sort of interaction works, and they had figured out a system
Mm-hmm.
how to go about it, and between them
Mm-hmm.
they were on a different level, or
Yeah.
talking honestly about that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, that's actually an interesting discussion because first of all, it's kind of on Myrna's part, it's about challenging the system and saying this is how it is now. And on his part, it's upholding the system but getting the job done. So they kind of question who she is in that crime scene. And Jake says, she's my secretary, just so that everybody shuts up and gives them the information that they need. And she is kind of this, you know, character who knows that this is probably the right way, but also wants to challenge and kind of show them that this is the world now and that's how it's going to be, and women can do this job as well, and you don't have to be so surprised. So yeah, this is actually an interesting moment, and I think this the dynamic between the characters in that moment is very good too, because it kind of shows them both from different angles, but they still work together as a system. And I think it's also a very big part of our podcast is us liking when things work between people as a system, when everybody does their job really well. And I think this is an example of that.
Yeah, it also highlights their dynamic really well. Like that exchange shows, okay, they have been through a lot, and they show how they work as partners. But the other thing is really interesting that you were saying is that this is one way of going against the system, sort of playing with the rules, but sort of
Mm-hmm,
um in a way smartly, or working
mm-hmm,
your way around them, which has its disadvantages because it's, I guess, a slower process, and is it's, well, totally different than what the bride and Frank are doing, which is more in your face and
mm-hmm,
direct.
mm-hmm. Yeah, but you know, the problem with this storyline again is that not that it's bad on its own, but how it integrates into the bigger picture, into the whole story. And I feel like there the problem lies, not with the characters on their own and not with their individual storylines, but with the integration. Yeah, I just feel like it didn't really, yeah, it didn't get
Yeah,
integrated too well.
yeah, I'm with you on that. Like if we look at it from the narrative perspective, and the whole plot.
Hmm.
But going back a bit to the references, and since I already mentioned the Frankenbride, the other reference I could see here was in the makeup and the way that later the rebellion or revolutionary movement
The female
starts to.
rage.
Yeah, this reminded me of the Joker mostly,
Hmm.
and actually, the cinematographer of this movie is Lawrence Sher, who was the cinematographer in the Joker movies.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if I see a lot of similarities in the
No,
cinematography between the two movies, but at
I
least in
don't
the
think
makeup,
so.
in the makeup, for sure, you could draw some
You
parallels. I
think
don't know if
so?
it was specifically influenced by that movie.
Hmm. I feel like in the Joker, the makeup is more realistic. It's more crude, kind of, you know? And here it's more intentional, especially with the bride. Which, yeah, I mean, obviously, Frankenstein, Christian Bale also had to have this kind of very specific makeup to make him look as the creature. Actually, I saw one video, it was funny, where people were discussing what Christian Bale had to do for this film, and the question was, well, did he lose weight or did he gain weight? And some people were saying, no, he actually had to die for this role and then be reinvigorated again to kind of live through this experience. But no, I think in this case, it was
Like
a lot of makeup it was involved.
he is Jesus, right? He came back to life.
Yeah, I mean, I know, right? This is the personification of what he is for our cult, for our religion. How did
Yeah,
you call it? Balianism?
Balianism, yeah.
Balianism.
Uh,
Oh my God.
but can you clarify what did you mean with intentional? Intentional in what sense?
It's more, it how should I put it? The makeup in it's also more static, obviously, because in the Joker, it evolved and changed with the circumstances, with the environment, with the character. It's just makeup, right? So if you sweat, if there is any like environmental kind of things involved, it kind of just bleeds, it leaks, right? But
Hmm.
in this case, it was very static. It was part of the characters. So for Jessie Buckley's character, it was this kind of like almost ink splash on her face from this solution that was used to revive her, which was a great touch. I think it was
Yep.
a great detail. And for Frank, it is his kind of just face that was plastered together to create him, right? So it
Hmm.
is part of the characters, and it's not, I don't know if we can compare it directly to what makeup of the Joker is, because it's still only makeup. In this case, the makeup is part of the character.
No, but I think static is a good word, and you're right that I like the touch that well, like you said, that the bride's character has this sort of ink to the side of her face and goes up, but it stays in the same way the whole time. And I was thinking it's interesting how they. I guess it looks the same all throughout the movie, and I'm guessing that the makeup team did that like a sort of like a print or a mold so that it looks the same all the time. The same goes for Frankie's character that, well, yeah, it doesn't change. And there's one look. And for Frankie's character, he looks closer to the 1931 Frankenstein
Mhm.
monster. Yeah, with like
Obviously
this,
not
is it?
Jacob Elordi.
No, yeah, yeah, totally, totally different to Jacob Elordi. But I still like that it's quite realistic in the sense that it's stitched together and there's parts where he's sort of leaking out and also his hair, so his hair is not very uniform, so he has some bald spots.
Mhm.
And but his I guess Frankie's appearance changes a little bit because halfway throughout the movie he gets these tattoos on I think on his
Mhm.
chest and on his arm as well.
Mhm. Well, I also just kind of think about how this is supposed to reference Joker. And obviously this is part of the element of the character, this ink splash on her face that gets repeated by the people that trying to emulate her and her behavior and her protest. And this was kind of I guess, the reference to Joker, where exactly the people would put this kind of makeup on as well and go out on the streets. But again, for me, this falls short. I think it is already a bit of a different topic, so maybe we can pause before we discuss it. But how there's no uniform ideology, really. There is only the outcry of a woman. There is the female rage, but what it actually means, I don't know. Because in the Joker, there was a clear message: the suppression of a class by kind of the powers that be, by the people that have wealth and people that have power. And here, I don't quite understand what the message is supposed to be. What are the people that are coming out on the streets? What exactly is the protest about?
Yeah, well, actually, I think that it's not clear. I think I prefer that choice because
Mhm.
I guess one of the messages is like oppressed women or even like women who have been abused speaking up uh, is one of the things they talk about. But then again, so like you said, the makeup is very identifiable.
Mhm.
But if we have a look at the people later about from this revolution or rebellion or what or movement or however you want to call it, I think I'm fine with that. It means a different thing for every one of them, and everyone has their own sort of interpretation or of that. I think I liked it, and that makes it feel more realistic to me.
Yeah, I understand what you mean, but I also just think I feel like it falls short from showing what exactly the problem is, because it shows the problem that Ida had, but also not in much detail. So I don't feel like we see or witness a lot of oppression and a lot of abuse. Obviously, it is implied, but I think I would appreciate it was if it was shown a little bit as a problem, if it was established as a problem before we start fighting it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. It's a great point that it's yeah the problem maybe isn't talked about directly always, and maybe yeah that isn't defined. So that means that you can't tackle that and solve it and approach it in a certain way, be it through institutions or whatever. So I think one of the scenes where it's clear or where it's directly said where what the sort of problems are in that society at the time is when at that ball scene, let me call it this way, when they're already on, when Frankie and the bride are on the run, and they stumble into this sort of high society event, and there is this dance sequence first, and then we have the standoff between the bride and the police that arrive there. Do you remember what the bride was saying to the police? Because she spits out some things. I think she addresses some people directly about what they had done, but
Mhm.
I feel like there was something else to that as well.
See, this is exactly the point. It's like it's very hard to understand what she is talking about because we were never shown what she's talking about. It's kind of implied that a lot of women fell victim to this mafia system that is going on, and the police are not doing anything about it. And she is often mentioning specific names of women, but because we don't know who they are, it's kind of like, yeah, okay. I don't know. I couldn't really connect to that. And this is my problem again. And I mean, it's the same problem as we just talked about, is that it doesn't get shown enough to be relevant almost and to be understood as a problem. It's implied, and a lot, I think it really kind of relies too heavily on things that are implied and is not showing a lot of things that would be nice to show. And this is exactly one of them, I think. So it's really hard to even remember what she was saying. I mean, obviously for you, it's fresher than it is for me by a week. So if you don't remember, then I don't even I don't even try.
No, but I think you're right on the money by saying that it's mostly implied, and she mentioned some names of some women, but the problem is in name. From what I
Mhm.
understood, it's basically, or like I mentioned before, it's that women are abused by the mafia and the system, if you
Mhm.
will, and
But you don't even know how in which ways they are abused. You know,
yeah.
it's like you saw the situation that happened to Ida, which to be fair is not really indicative of any particular abuse. This was more of an accident what happened to her than a systematic abuse. You can see that the situation that we find her in is already not very savory. It's not a healthy situation, but we don't know anything about it. We don't know any background, so it's really hard to even judge. And that is a bit of an issue here.
Yeah, I agree with you that maybe showing the problem and framing it and defining it, putting a name to it would help, as opposed to here it's implied and maybe it's just intended as a starting point of a discussion. But if we're talking specifically about problems that we have or happened in Hollywood, then that's already clear to those viewers. What I also liked here is I remember that at some point here when the bride is, well, mentioning some people specifically, but the camera cuts to some also, well, men, but also women, which gives sort of a look of embarrassment, or not embarrassment. What's the right adjective for that? Well, sort of that they feel ashamed or guilty. Yeah, guilty is the word. So again, a bit subtler, and for me, this alludes to, well, what I was just saying, this whole Me Too movement and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. But I this for me is again kind of a sign of the fact that this film was trying to do a whole lot and really a lot of things. And then it just really falls short of doing most of them. I feel like less is more would be a good rule of thumb here in this particular case, because a lot of the storylines, a lot of the characters, I even question of how necessary were those characters even. Like we were just talking about Jake Gyllenhaal's character, and what is he actually doing for this film? If he wasn't there, would that change anything? I feel like it really wouldn't. At least his character, I wouldn't miss him. I think it could have been shown in any other way and still have worked without having to include a character. And this is kind of, if you have so many moving parts and you, I guess, ignore some of the ones that would have been important, I think this is what it looks like to me in this film. And we haven't even mentioned all of them yet. I don't know, do we want to go on? Because I have one that I would like to discuss.
Yeah, well, maybe quickly just finish talking about this scene at this dance or whatever it was.
Yep.
Well, before that, there is actually a dance where Frankie starts dancing because he meets Ronnie, and this is a reference to another movie by Mel Brooks, I believe. You can look it up on IMDb. That's what I did.
Hmm.
But yeah, there was a moment there where the camera is showing the dance group, Frankie and the bride in the middle, and the rest of dancers on the sides. From the front, very musical like, and that just took me out of it for a moment. I thought it was, yeah, it didn't fit tonally, and that took me out.
Interesting you should say that, because for me, it actually, I kind of embraced it. I understand what you mean, though. It really kind of is a moment where you're like, what? Why? But I kind of tried to embrace it, and then actually I thought it kind of worked fine
Yeah,
eventually.
I like the dance itself and how it led to that, and I mean the emotion behind that dance, and how that changes to something more rebellious. But I didn't like the choice of like shots. Like I said, the one from the front, and there are a couple of them from, I think, from an eagle eye perspective or from
Hmm.
above. So
Yeah.
yeah, it just yeah, it literally took me out because you can see the cast from the top, and you're not submerged, and that added
Hmm.
perspective.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's almost like a music, like a Backstreet Boys music video. In
yeah,
that
like
sense.
insert a
Yeah.
musical here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it didn't quite work for me. I guess maybe it's
Okay,
also
got you.
intended, like you said, that it's a break from what was currently
Hmm.
happening, but And then the other question that I had after sort of the bride shoots one of the cops is Frankie pulls down this chandelier, right? But I think that it doesn't work out from the height, if I'm not mistaken, or the chandelier is super low for Frankie to pull that
Wow.
down.
No, I didn't even think about that, but now that you say it, yeah, for sure. I think there are generally a lot of very campy moments, but it seems very intentional, and it's most of the time fine for me. It again, it almost kind of embraces the weirdness, and it's okay. I don't think it will work for everyone. By no means can I imagine that it will, but it sometimes again almost falls short. It's as if the campiness is, as you said, insert musical here. That's how it feels. It's like it's not intentional and consistent throughout. It's just very kind of pieced together, almost like a Frankenstein monster in its own right, where it's like this and that, and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And then something comes together, and you're like, what is that? And you don't know what you're looking at, and I don't know if it's good or bad. And as I said, I feel like everybody kind of has to decide that for themselves.
Yeah, but that's a great analogy. Like you said, that this movie is stitched together like
Hmm.
Frankenstein's monster himself. It also reminded me a bit of there are. Oh wait, actually, it's we talked about this recently. Sort of like these musicals, like Moulin Rouge, where what's the genre? They are in this. Who these musicals who reference a lot of older musicals. There's a name for that
Hmm.
where I forget what it was.
I think I don't know if that's what you mean, but there are musicals that have the original music for the musical and the ones that already use music that exists. So like popular music.
Right, yeah, that's a different thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I meant there are also some musicals where there are lots of different influences from different genres and they blend together.
Mm.
Yeah, I also thought that the title, Bride with an exclamation mark, and when we see the title
Oklahoma.
card. All right, yeah. So I was there are a couple of musicals who
Hmm.
do that exact way with that exclamation mark, but also like those lights, right?
Hmm.
Um, is I think in you can see that in a couple of musicals. So I guess that's the musical influence in there. And it reminded me actually of this. Have you seen Chicago? The movie Chicago with Richard Gere and Catherine
Not really.
Zeta-Jones? No, you
This
wouldn't
is
have
one of
because
those
it's an
films you don't have to watch them, but you have seen them actually.
yeah. It reminded me of that because of like these lights, but also about, well, it's
Well, it
a
also has a
woman
similar
who,
atmosphere of the 30s and
yes.
the mafia and all that, I think, the
Yeah,
general.
although I think it's a bit later, Chicago, but sort of the conflict and the themes overlap a bit.
But yeah, another big part that we haven't discussed yet directly is this feminist angle of the film. And I think the major plot point that we haven't mentioned yet, but that is very important, is that probably for the first time, Mary Shelley, who is the mastermind of Frankenstein, right? The creator of Frankenstein, gets included into the story. And the way that she does get included into the story is by this kind of almost a spirit that possesses Ida, possesses the bride, the titular character. And then it does a lot of things to the story. First of all, obviously, it includes this character. Again, it introduces yet another character. And it forces Jessie Buckley to play two characters. She switches between two accents, right? She speaks in a British, like a very standard British accent, and American accent because Ida is American, right? So that is only one thing that it does, but let's talk about that for now.
Yeah. Question. why is Mary Shelley as a character in this movie? I mean, you answered partly why she's in the movie, but
I mean, I understand the motivation behind this as wanting to give voice to this character, wanting to give agency, to give back the agency to the woman behind the story, because obviously the story revolves around Frankenstein the creator and Frankenstein the monster, right? Behind all this is a woman who is deeply depressed over death of her child, right? So I understand that there is an element of feminine rage even in the story itself. Plus, in the story of the bride, this is given kind of a new life, a new iteration through the introduction of the bride, right? Because this is not in the original story. Um, and I guess it's an interesting angle that you kind of, yeah, I mean, that she gets possessed by the spirit and the spirit is so mad, and you get to see the action that gets kind of introduced through this spirit, through this character, right? Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's all I can say.
no, that's a good point. And I think, yeah, I think I liked how you phrase it that giving, did you say giving agency to Mary Shelley? I think that's an interesting point that, and it talks a bit about, well, what this movie is about, or what we found out so far is that giving her her voice back, because it gets alluded to in the movie as well. I think that she didn't have the chance to say or tell the story that she wanted, or the novel did get published on under her name, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. But I think it gets alluded when between Penelope's and Sarsgaard's character that she couldn't put her name on,
Hmm.
I think, as a detective, which is sort of parallel to that. Yeah, from that perspective, I like it. I like the idea that it's sort of giving, I mean, Gyllenhaal giving Shelley a voice to sort of
Hmm.
continue her story, or I mean, I guess she interprets it in the way that she wanted more, she had more to say.
Hmm.
Um, I also liked it from the perspective that I guess Mary Shelley characters is in the prologue of the movie, and she works as a sort of, well, do you have another comparison where we have a sort of spirit or ghost that appears in the prologue of the movie and sort of gives us as a starting point? I mean, my comparison is a literary one, which would be Faust, this novel by this German writer Goethe, who also there's a prologue in the sky, which sort of gives us the reference of how what this movie is going to be about. Couldn't think of any uh, movie references in that
No,
regard.
I can't think of anything
Yeah, it's hard to do on the
related.
spot.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I think it's not the worst part of this film. I kind of in the beginning was skeptical about it, and I still am. I don't really know what to think, but I think it kind of works in a way. Again, I don't think it works all the way through. And sometimes I even question why exactly was it introduced. Um, because it's kind of like this push to the character, right? It's never her own or rarely her own impulse, but it's just the push from Mary internally, right? I'm really wondering what exactly this does and what it is supposed to signify. I think I would have to think about it more and maybe rewatch the film to get more clues as to what it is. But yeah.
I think the way you put it beautifully into words is like you said, this on that she has a chance of an ongoing conversation and she has a voice. And maybe like you, where I when I initially watched the movie, I was taken out a bit because it's very in your face. And I mean, Mary Shelley character is a ghost. She's, I mean, a ghost in the sense that she wasn't able to rest and she's very aggressive and that sort of thing. So it's a interpretation of her figure as a character as well. And the language that she uses, you mentioned it, that Jessie Buckley puts on a different accent for that character.
Mhm.
So that was a bit too much in my face for me. And
Mhm.
there's also this thing that also happens in the scene we talked about before at this dance, where the bride has these well, she sort of vomits. She has these literary vomits where she
Mhm.
pours out multiple words in succession that sometimes rhyme,
Mhm.
but sometimes these are like different topics or synonyms or that sort of thing. And yeah, that's I don't know. That's a bit. I couldn't
You
come
know
to
what
terms
this
with it.
is a reference to?
What?
Joker's laugh.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, yeah. Now that you put it
Because
there.
that's again something he cannot control. But in the Joker, this is organic. It's part of him. And this is what takes me out of it. This is what I have, where I have my doubts about this kind of,
Yeah,
yeah, whatever you want to call it. Not really storyline, but about, yeah,
yeah.
the
This
mechanics
character
of it, I guess,
or
and
mechanics.
the character and how and why it got included is that you gave the agency to the bride, but the agency of the bride, or you gave the agency to Mary Shelley, but the agency of the bride is tainted by her being possessed by a ghost. It's kind of like, yeah, is that really what you were going for? I don't know. I mean, the ghost of the general spirit of the feminine rage, I can understand. But I feel like you don't need to be possessed to be enraged as a woman, to be rightfully enraged. And that is what
I can
kind of
attest to
doesn't work
that.
for me.
I can attest to that.
Yeah, see? But yeah, I feel like it kind of shoots itself in its own leg, this film, with this message, with this trope, is because yeah, does Ida really need help with that? Because it seems like she has enough reasons to be mad herself. And
Hmm.
why couldn't she just be a character on her own almost? I'm not,
Yep.
again, I don't think that this how I still don't have a word for it, but this I guess plot line or the introduction of this
Device,
character
narrative device.
device is not bad per se. It was interesting, and I appreciate that it was included, but how it was worked around, I'm not sure.
I agree with you on that. Yeah, like you said, that it's not fully or it's integrated, but yeah, maybe it's tonally very different to the other things going on into the movie. And I think this, I mean, I agree with you. I don't like the how that much. I like the why it's included, but maybe the how I'm not 100% there. And I think it's also a bit what you mentioned before that that problem isn't talked about or it's implied and here again, with these, like we said, these ticks or these possessions that the bride has, it's very, I mean, those are references as well. And it's not very apparent or not very direct. And maybe it would have been nice to make that a bit more obvious. I mean, yeah, because for me, it took me out a bit and I didn't really understand it
Hmm.
in some parts. But yeah, interesting that you mentioned Ida because maybe my next question was, what is Ida's arc?
I have no idea. That's the whole problem. And to be honest, that's exactly what I was going to talk about because again, everything is so packed that you're like, what exactly? Where are we heading? What do we want? When do we want it? I don't really understand where we are heading with this film. And everything is kind of on top of everything else. There is Mary Shelley, the feminine rage, the feminist angle in general, the protesters, the violence, the film noir, the mafia, violence against people in general and women in particular from the side of the mafia. Then there is the monster and his isolation. There is him looking for love. There is her looking for who she is. There's a lot of stuff, and I don't understand. I'm so disoriented. I don't understand what is going on. Do you have an answer to this question? What is her arc?
I guess now that you put it this way, that you summarize the different things going on in this movie, is that she's thrown into this world or reborn into this world, and she sort of has to figure herself out and where she sits between all of that. And maybe again, it's not so explicit or only gets explored in some scenes. And for me, at least, the conclusion is when she decides on her name, what she's going to be called. But at the beginning or throughout it, I guess it's also figuring out that, well, Frankie tells her this lie that she was her bride. And then after the confrontation with Detective Wiles, well, she learns that she actually was another person and that Frankie had lied to her. So in that sense, yeah, there is some where she starts to become her own character and gets a bit away from what you were saying in this Mary Shelley character. But yeah, maybe again, the conclusion is very in your face on the nose.
That's what I want to say to this is if you want to watch a film where a woman is trying to discover who she is because she is a nobody, watch Poor Things instead of The Bride, which is again
Right.
exactly the same thing,
Yeah.
in the sense that this is what The Bride was trying to be.
Yeah.
And the Poor Things does it a lot better, I'm sorry to say.
It's more focused.
Yeah, and it is very focused indeed on this problem, right? And the fact that the bride is already born into being the bride, I mean, in a way, I guess this is a play on that, right? The movie kind of plays with this idea, but it doesn't really crush this idea by the end. This is what I was hoping, is that she will be like, I'm nobody's bride and I am just me and this is how it is and all that. But she doesn't that's not the idea of the film. And she still, despite the fact that Frankie lied to her and was trying to shape her right into being his bride and really nothing else, because that was her purpose of her creation, is to be his bride, right? And this is not deconstructed in any way. And this is a bit of a problem for me personally.
Yeah, for me, there's very little. There's some deconstruction in the sense here in the scene where she chooses her name, and I think first they juggle around a few ideas. I think Frankie should suggest Frankenstein's bride, but then she just comes up with the bride, which for me signifies a bit that, well, she's independent and she chooses her own name, or sort of keeps her own name, if you want to. I mean, if you want to talk about real people and like women keeping their name. So that's how I interpreted that. It's a very minor, small thing. But yeah, I guess that's how I saw that. Yeah, great that you mentioned Poor Things, because yeah, I was also thinking about Poor Things while watching this, and that she's stitched together and has to figure out stuff. Yeah, that movie also reminded me a bit of Faust, which is about this intellectual who, well, he wants to get to know everything about the world and experience everything, and it's sort of about him figuring stuff out. And that, well, Poor Things is a bit like that in that sense, and The Bride as well. but also Frankie's character, especially at the beginning, where he comes to Dr. Fronius and says, well, I've been along for so long and I'm looking for a companion. And Faust is like that as well, that Mephisto then introduces him to this girl or woman called Gretchen, which is basically like Frankie is like Faust in that sense that he's looking for someone. Dr. Fronius is Mephisto or the devil, and the bride is Gretchen. So I liked that first exchange between Dr. Fronius and Frankie, and as opposed to, I guess, the bride, I found that Frankie is a bit more sensible, sensitive. No, sensitive is the word. At the beginning of the movie, that, well, he didn't have a lot of human interaction. Like he mentioned, this that the first time, well, when he shakes hands with Dr. Fronius, that's the first contact he had in over, I don't know, hundreds of years. Yeah, so I like that they are sort of opposites of the same coin, the bride and Frankie.
Speaking of which, just shortly, I wanted to mention that Annette Bening's character, the doctor that creates the bride, for me is the least believable character in the whole film, and I really did not like this character.
Why?
It completely took me out of the story. It didn't fit the atmosphere for me. It's almost like it was written for a different film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean that goes with what you were saying, like stitching different things together, and maybe this is, well, I guess it's taking from the novel or this sort of mad scientist. I thought overall the production design, like speaking about her lab, I think is tonally quite the tone is kept, which I liked as opposed to other things we discussed here and things that I've seen recently. So that I like from the production design, and we mentioned the makeup, that it's mostly consistent. I didn't mind her character at all. It didn't take me out. What did take me out at some point is when they start reviving the bride, and then the doctor mentions, "Oh, I'm going to do this and that has this an effect," and she throws around some like physics and chemistry word, which I thought I would have left that out, because if
I
you are an
agree.
expert in that subject matter, it's clear to you that it's just gibberish. So I would just have excluded that, because it's like when hackers in movies talk about
Yeah.
computer science and they make up some fancy terms and stuff like that.
hmm
So I would have left that part out.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that too while I was watching, but for me, this character was already lost beyond repair by that point. So, no, but I also kind of questioned the lab situation because I was like, if you didn't do that before, then why do you have all that on hand? Because she said that she only tried to do it with animals, I think, before. And yeah, now suddenly she has this setup that just completely works, everything's good, and yeah, it's kind of
Hmm.
questionable for me personally. But yeah, this is just one of those things.
I think, well, we get her scene at the end where she also tells him that they were trying to create, she was trying to create this, not singularity, she uses another term, but this aberration or something that's out of the norm with her husband, but they didn't manage to succeed in that. But with the bride, she sort of did.
hmm
Um, Two things on that. First, I thought at some point they show the cat, that the doctor has a cat. Her assistant brings a cat, and the cat sort of has a like mustache sort of pattern
Hmm.
on its face. And I thought, oh, maybe she turned her husband into the cat, but
Yeah.
that's completely random. But the other thing, I guess, fits into the themes of the movie, that the bride is this sort of aberration or out of the norm thing, and she's there to defy the status quo in some way. A bit obvious, but I guess
hmm
that's why this is included, or yeah.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that we haven't talked about in great detail yet is Jessie Buckley herself, who I think carries this film on her back courageously and gracefully. She is the best thing about this film, and I think it is a consensus. Nobody criticized her for this role. It is the best, really the best thing about this film. She plays almost, you can say, two characters that are quite, I mean, more or less different. Um,
Three, you could argue, if you could count Ida, the bride, and Mary Shelley.
yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, we don't really see a lot of Ida in the
Hmm.
beginning. We don't really know the baseline. We just know that she's kind of detached from what's going on and resigned from life in a way. And the bride or the Mary Shelley kind of reinvigorates her. Um, yeah, I think this was a great job, and this was now in a very short span of time. The second film that I saw with Jessie Buckley, the first one being Hamnet, obviously, which, as I said, she's gonna get an Oscar now on Sunday. Hopefully, when we release this, this is already gonna be confirmed. I am gonna be the prophet. But yeah, so this was another great role by her. She's great. She's doing a great job with everything she does, I feel like. And yeah, that's just what I want to say as the highlight of the film.
Yeah, I watched Hamnet in preparation for this because I wanted to have like a sort of comparison, totally different roles. For me, I don't know. It's more about the writing and her dialogues, and like I said, those literary vomits that she has. Couldn't really connect to her character that much. I
Mhm.
guess that's also the point of it. Yeah, so I don't know how much I can talk about performance. I mean, yeah, I think she
No, I
does a great
agree.
job, and with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
accents, yeah, like I said, it's just that I couldn't. I don't know.
Hmm.
Maybe I wasn't looking at the performance that much, or how she did, like certain choices she made with face facial movements, or whatever.
No, I agree. I know what you mean because it does take you out of it a little bit because if it's not written so well, then you cannot really connect, I guess.
At least for me, maybe I could see her performance less because I was so distracted with all the other things going around her. I wanted to ask you, so Jessie Buckley has this sort of, what's it called, like a smirk, or that she always goes to the one side of her face.
Hmm.
Um, I wanted to ask you, does that match where the ink on her makeup is? Is that the side where she usually goes to?
I feel like yes, because I think it's on the right side. So I would say,
Mm-hmm.
why? Is that something you notice over several roles?
I mean, it's just people pointing it out, but yeah, if you watch her, that's something very distinctive about her, and I think it's cool, a
Hmm.
cool feature. I mean, and
Hmm.
if you can integrate that into the roles, that's cool. Yeah, I don't I mind it. It's one of her peculiarities, and I think that's interesting. What I said about Jesse Buckley, you could also say about Christian Bale. I think he's great in the role, but I was a bit too distracted about what was happening around just to
Hmm.
fully appreciate what they were doing.
Yeah, I think this is a great way to put it because it is a bit sad because you have so many resources and so many great actors. Like really, this movie is packed, but because of the way that it is made and because of the structure of the film and all the storylines that you want to squeeze in, you kind of don't get all the value from the great cast that you have.
Yeah, and I think in that regard, Hamnet, it's a bit more focused, that movie, and there you get to see her show off, and that's the movie she's nominated for, right? So yeah, there a completely different character, and yeah, there you can appreciate more of what she's doing and what she's communicating with her performance. I wanted to ask you about Christian Bale. Does his accent change from the beginning towards the end? I had that impression.
I haven't really noticed. I didn't really pay attention, but I mean, I would trust Christian Bale to do a great accent job in any case. So even if that happened, that must have been intentional because Christian Bale is one of the best people for accents, I feel like.
I didn't pay close attention, but I thought that in the first encounter with Dr. Fronius, he had a more of an English accent. And then I noticed when they are running away with the bride in the car that he had more of a New York kind of accent,
Mm-hmm.
closer aligned to what
Mm-hmm.
Jessie Buckley was doing. I mean, like you said, he both of them are great actors, and I could see him doing that, but
Yeah,
I
no,
wasn't
that
paying
would also be
attention.
kind of consistent with the character. I feel like if that happened, then he does kind of copy, what even the behaviors, I guess, he's still um and not really human, right? So it would make sense, I guess.
Hmm.
You know what my favorite moment in the film was when Ida, the bride, is thinking about Frankenstein, the name, and then she's like, "Is are you German?" And then he answers, "No, I'm Swiss." I thought, like the laugh that went through our cinema as well. That
Yeah,
was kind of funny.
2 hours as well. Yes, yes. And there's actually, oh, I read that the way he pronounces a name, something like Dietrich, he pronounces it like in a
Hmm.
Swiss way as opposed to Jesse Buckley. I think it does
Yeah,
say
the
Dietrich,
American. Yeah.
yeah, American. Yeah,
Hmm.
also another small detail. Is there anything that we are left to discuss from your side?
Um, I think we generally talked about everything. Just to reiterate, I feel like this movie was trying to do a lot of things, and this was a bit of a problem. It definitely has its moments, and there are definitely some moments that don't work as well as they probably were intended to. This is probably where I'm gonna leave it.
I wanted to just say, address something that we mentioned before. I thought that you brought up is that with why is Ronnie in the movie? And something that I did like in this movie is the cinematography. I mean, mostly it doesn't stand out for me, but I really like the night scenes where there are, well, mostly when the bride and Frankie go to the cinema and have a look at those huge signs, golden signs, and also the cars at lights. There's a lot of gold, and I guess that's is supposed to represent that golden age of Hollywood. That looks really nice, and I think why Ronnie is there is, like you mentioned, well, the characters he plays represent the golden age of Hollywood, as opposed to him as an actor when he has that exchange with Frankie is more about what was actually going on behind the scenes and the actual problems happening in Hollywood at that time and today. So maybe that's why I can see why he is included in the movie as well. Going back to an opinion is yeah, I think I'm mostly with you on your side that what you said it's maybe a bit too much or too many different things. Like I said, it's a genre pastiche. There are a lot of references. I was thinking about this before we started the show. So what do references add? And I guess they add a second viewing value. So like you mentioned, this I would have to rewatch this movie and see, okay, how do these things connect? And I'm glad that we did uncover a lot of them here and in this show. For me, where I guess general audiences and for us as well, where this didn't work is what you said is like the plot, the conflict, or Ida's arc that it doesn't seem or it doesn't have one, I feel like,
Hmm.
and that's where you also can't emotionally connect. But I did find this as an interesting experiment from Maggie Gyllenhaal diving into so many genres and references. Yeah, from that side, I think I appreciated this movie.
That just made me think about something, a general observation. So I made previously, my observation was that lately a lot of directors are inspired by the gothic, and I want to make another observation. My observation from the previous couple of films that we discussed, that directors recently seem to lean into camp a lot. So a lot of films that well, not a lot, but like a few films that we recently discussed, we did mention the word campy as a description of those films. And this was in particular Wuthering Heights. And now I would say this applies to The Bride as well. I think it would be interesting to see whether that is going to continue. And another observation I must say here is the fact that they are made by women. I don't know if that's a sign of anything or if that is only kind of a thing that women specifically do, women directors. But yeah, this is just one little thing. I'm sure there are other films that kind of do something similar in recent years. But yeah, because those were the last two films we discussed, or the not counting Marty, but Wuthering Heights and The Bride.
I thought this was a also pretty unique or different take, or it had something to say. It was a different perspective, and I don't know if that's necessarily because Maggie Gyllenhaal is a woman, but most likely I thought it was an interesting new perspective. So I appreciated this movie for that, and like I said, it's an interesting experiment.
Do you have a quote for me? I think we can wrap up here, right, for today. In general, I would say watch it
Mm-hmm.
and see for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely worth a rewatch from my side as well. And to finish
Hmm.
this show, I have to leave you with
Hmm.
one quote from the Cajun Bible.
Ooh. Which is the IMDb quote list.
I wish to spend a season in hell where all the amusing people are. Hail Satan.
That just sounds perfect for as a wrap up for The Bride.
Thank you for listening and catch you next time. Bye.